On October 6, 1973, Egyptian and Syrian forces launched an attack on Israel, hoping to gain back territory lost in the Third Arab-Israeli War of 1967. This began the Yom Kippur War of 1973, which lasted for 20 days, ending in an Israeli victory. This war took the lives of over 8,000 people on both sides. Among those lost included a young flutist named Yadin Tenenbaum, who lost his life in a tank near the Sinai. This death inspired the famous American conductor and composer Leonard Bernstein to compose a work for solo flute and chamber orchestra entitled Halil.
Halil was composed in 1981 and premiered on May 27th of the same year in Tel Aviv with the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. Bernstein conducted the performance himself, and the soloist was Jean-Pierre Rampal. The American premiere was given on July 4th, 1981 in Tanglewood in Lenox, Massachusetts, with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Although still under the baton of Bernstein, this time the soloist was Dorothy Anthony Dwyer.
About his piece, Bernstein writes, "This work is dedicated to the spirit of Yadin and to his fallen brothers." The references to Yadin Tenenbaum, a 19-year-old Israeli flutist who, in 1973 during the Yom Kippur War, at the height of his musical powers, was killed in his tank in the Sinai. He would have been 27 years old at the time this piece was written. Halil, the Hebrew word for flute, is formally unlike any other work I have written, but is much of my music in its struggle between tonal and non-tonal forces. In this case, I sense that struggle as involving wars and the threat of wars, the overwhelming desire to live, and the consolations of art, love, and the hope for peace. It is a kind of night music which, from its 12-tone row to its ambiguously diatonic final cadence, is an ongoing conflict of nocturnal images. Wish dreams, nightmares, repose, sleeplessness, night terrors, and sleep itself, death's twin brother. I never knew Yadin Tenenbaum, but I know his spirit. It is interesting to mention that Bernstein himself had sleeping troubles, and maybe this is why he refers to sleep as death's twin brother.
Halil was originally written as a piece for chamber orchestra, including solo flute, piccolo, and alto flute, hidden the percussion set, strings and harp, and a huge array of percussion instruments to be played with 5 players. Bernstein condensed this version in 1987 to the version we are performing today. In order to do so, he transcribed the strings, harp, keyboard percussion, timpani, and the hidden piccolo and alto flute parts into the piano reduction. The rest of the original percussion parts remain the same.
The percussion instruments for Halil include 4 tom-toms, 4 snare drums, snare drum with the snares on, snare drum played with brushes, timpani, high and low gongs, crash cymbals, we also have high and low suspended cymbals, bass drum, tam-tam, high and low triangles, and 4 wood blocks. It is hard to define the genre of Halil. It could be viewed as a flute concerto, but it is only in one movement, and the flute becomes silent for most of the ending section. It could also be viewed as a symphonic poem or tone poem, as it is a single movement work that depicts the death of a soldier at war. However, Bernstein calls it a nocturne, which is a work that suggests night and usually has a quiet and meditative character.
As Bernstein wrote in his program note for Halil, it's like much of my music in its struggle between tonal and non-tonal forces. Similar to his Third Symphony, Kaddish, Bernstein employs both tonal and atonal practice through Halil. The piece starts rooted in 12-tone practice, with a full roll being presented in the first 12 notes by the solo flute. In 12-tone music, the composer chooses an order for the 12 notes of the chromatic scale as the basis for the entire piece.
The row Bernstein has chosen for Halil is F flat, D flat, F, A flat, C, B flat, E flat, B, A, D, G, F sharp, which are the 12 notes played by the solo flute. This row is used throughout the 12-tone sections in Halil. For example, after the first row is presented by the flute, it is then immediately played backwards by the flute, which is called retrograde by theorists.
Further analysis shows that the row can be split into 3 cells, and these cells can be found many times throughout the remainder of the piece.
Cell 1. Cell 2. Cell 3.
Other sections of Halil are rooted in tonality, meaning there is a central pitch around which the rest of the music is structured. For example, this section of the piece is in D flat major. This key is important because Halil also ends in D flat. However, we are uncertain whether it's in D flat major or D flat minor. It's hard to know these without seeing the music, but the last 3 notes, F flat, D flat, and F natural, are also the very first 3 notes of the entire piece. Bernstein has a has done a great job here tying the whole piece together from the beginning to the end.
Programmatically, Halil represents images of dreams, nightmares, sleeplessness, and death. We believe that Yadin's death is depicted at the end of the cadenza, where 4 rim shots are played by the snare drum, and the flute plays the highest note in the piece very loudly, and then remains silent for about 60 bars until the end of the piece. During this silence, in the original chamber orchestra version, the piccolo and alto flute are to be hidden in the percussion section as instructed by the score, and thus are invisible to the audience, depicting Yadin's spirit rising to Shamayim, or what we would call heaven. According to Jack Gottlieb, Bernstein was reluctant to reveal that the pyrotechnical cadenza section depicted the slaughter of the Israeli soldier, but critics were quick to note this programmatic aspect of the work. In other words, according to Gottlieb, Bernstein did not disagree with this interpretation. Although one would see this as being very dark and pessimistic, Bernstein ends the piece tonally in D flat, giving it an optimistic outlook with feelings of love, hope, and peace.
Overall, Halil was received positively, but not enthusiastically. Donald Hanahan of the New York Times had this to say about its New York premiere on March 25, 1982. Mr. Bernstein, like any other composer, sometimes fails to turn out a masterpiece. What he does do, however, is to maintain a high level of artistic seriousness and professional competence. Both those qualities were evident in his Halil, which was given its New York premiere last night by the New York Philharmonic under composer's direction. Additionally, Humphrey Burton mentions that the members of the Boston Symphony were unimpressed with his new music and furious with his loquacious, digressive rehearsal style. During the 4th of July concert, which was also the American premiere of Halil. On the positive side, Burton writes about the Washington performance on March 1982 that the Tribune critic was impressed with a brooding, terrific element which whispers of nightmares and nameless horrors.
It seems that Bernstein was really fond of his creation, and he conducted the work many times, including it in some important concerts. It was performed in Vatican City in 1981 by the Accademia di Santa Cecilia Orchestra with soloists from the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. Pope John Paul II listened in from his bedroom through a closed-circuit audio system as he recovered from an attempted assassination. It is also interesting to note that the American premiere took place on the Boston Symphony's 4th of July concert.
Bernstein and Ellen Coates discussed Halil in 2 letters found at the Library of the Congress website. In the first letter, dated from 1981, Ellen Coates is curious about the premiere and mentions the upcoming performance in the Vatican. She wishes Bernstein great success and is looking forward to hearing the piece herself.
Lenny dear, I was so delighted to get your 2 cards from Munich and your telex from Israel. I don't dare send any important mail to you to Rome, knowing the vagaries of the Italian mail service. I hope, though, you may receive this just to let you know how glad I was to hear from you and that I am sending an envelope of mail to you by the children. I understand you have invited them and Shirley to join you in Rome, and I know you will have a happy family reunion. No one here seems to know whether you will be giving a concert at the Vatican. Certainly Pope John Paul will not be able to attend, even though he seems to be making a good recovery. I'm sure you were happy in Israel, and I hope all went well and that you were pleased with the premiere of your Halil. I hear it was a great success, and I can't wait to hear it. You've been gone much too long, and I eagerly wait to welcome you home. Until then, as always, Helen.
A letter from Bernstein to Coates dated August 27, 1985 show Bernstein's fondness for the piece, where he says, I personally, on the other hand, have fallen in love all over again with Halil, and Ransom Wilson is playing it like God.
Dearest Helen, a quick note from Ben Gurion Airport, en route to Munich in Japan, and the last 2 nights have made concert history here. Mahler number 9. I don't think I've ever heard it played with quite so much passion and tenderness. The orchestra is transformed. The newspaper is ecstatic. I'm enclosing the one non-ecstatic review, at least of Halil. The rest is the usual rave. I personally, on the other hand, have fallen in love all over again with Halil, and Ransom W. is playing it like a god. Dear Lenny, just a note to tell you in writing that it was an enormous pleasure you gave me this year to play your Halil with you. It is rare one flutist plays a solo with a great conductor who is that involved in the same work. I suspected as much, and the anticipation nearly tore me apart, and I loved Halil right from the start. Still, it was more than that. Even if it had not been your composition, I knew once you decided to perform it, you were giving it your creative attention and delivery. That is what was added to make this time a magical, great adventure for me. I hope we can work together again in some similar capacity. I don't expect exactly, but I will keep on this with stimulus, this gift of your composition, and performing with such as you and I do. Thank you for it. A lot. Dorian. Hi, Lenny. Halil arrived this morn. What a moving piece. As an ex-flutist, I used to play well at 15. I enjoy the flute writing, and I love the alto flute's role. The end reminds me of the first version of The Age of Anxiety, with that re-entry for 1 chord. Here it is, re-entry for 2 notes. It works though, and if I can't get Rumpal or Galway to play it with me, I'll have my first flute in Milwaukee learn it. She is wonderful. Sometime, can I hear a tape, or will the record be out soon? Love, ever, Lucas.
We will now conclude this documentary with a full performance of Halil.